نحمده ونشكره على ما هدانا ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وصحبه المنتجبين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظالم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله، اللهم لعنهم جميعا. عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام إنه قال: إذا بليت الإسلام براع مثل يزيد فعلى الإسلام السلام. If people have a person like Yazid as their leader, we have to say goodbye to Islam. Last night, looking at the verse in which classified human being into two categories, asfal as-safilin, worse than beast, and ahsanul khaliqin, the exemplary specimen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended the humans to be. Khalifatullah, God's vicegerents on earth, etc. What the verse creates is a continuum. It's a line in which identifies the two extremes. But as we went through a number of traditions and ahadith in which they identified for one to be a true human being, one needed to qualify or at least possess a number of traits and characters. The absence of these would push one towards the extreme of asfal as-safilin. The presence of these would move towards ahsan al-khaliqin. If a person through struggle, jihad, and control of ego, you get to the stage, as the verse in the Holy Quran says, in which everything in your life, your prayer, your fasting, your death, your living, your breathing and the sleep and everything else becomes for the sake of Allah, as the Quran talks about Prophet Ibrahim, then you are part of the Ahsan al-Khaliqin. However, if you become human-centric, self-centric, ego-centric, dunya-centric, material-centric, and then do not possess any of these characters, naturally you move towards asfal as-safilin. And I also alluded to the fact that if we look at the ahadith, the history in particular, Ashura represents the coming together or the manifestation of these two extremes confronting each other. On the one hand, you had individuals that did everything, their lives and everything else, for the sake of Allah. And on the other side, they were not human. They looked like human look-alike, but primarily lower than beast. The motivation was nothing but dunya and the material things that they possess. On the one hand, Allah, again, according to the verses in the Holy Quran, angels descended on them. وَالَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. Those who said, God, our Lord, God is our Lord, and then persevered. Istiqamah, jihad, persevered. Irrespective of the pain and the tribulation that they went through, they persevered. And according to the verse, angel descends on them. So on the one hand, that was the example. On the other hand, well, what we have is asfal as-safilin. Those people that أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. That Quran has a very explicit reference to such individuals, that they are lower even than the beast. If asfal as-safilin doesn't qualify it, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. I also said that there is a concept of maskh in Quran, deformment, that once shaitan takes over, استحوذ عليهم الشيطان فأنساهم ذكر الله. When shaitan takes over, like a mold, a plastic mold, and you become devoid, nothing in your life represents Allah at all, then جعل منهم قردة وخنازير. It's metaphorical, it's not literal that they turn them into buffoons and swines, but mentally the inner reality of these individuals was nothing more than these. After the meeting, one of the brothers was asking me regarding this issue of whether Ashura, we tend to accept as fact that Ashura revived Islam and the what we call the Prophet's message. How could that be? I tried to explain this last night, but because of the shortness of time, I thought probably I'll elaborate on it. إن كان دين محمد لا يستقم إلا بقتلي فيا سيوف خذين. This is by now it has become well known. Everybody says that if this is narrated from Imam Hussein salawatullah, if the deen or the message that the Holy Prophet brought is not going to become stable, then I'm prepared to give my life for it. Unless I die, then I'm prepared to give my life for it. The issue which was lost, nobody denies when we read history. By the beginning of the 61st of Hijrah, nobody denies that spirituality and dignity was lost from the Islamic community at the time. Because the social structure had become materialistic, for the sake of gaining material, people submitted and subjected themselves to anything that somehow became demeaning to their character. The concept of dignity and izzah was nowhere to be seen. People that wrote letters to Imam, deep down, they may have had some kind of heart connection. Yeah, they knew that Imam is the son of Imam Ali, brother of Imam Hassan, grandson of the Holy Prophet, etc., etc., etc. What motivated them was not principled, it was tactical. Let me explain. If you see what happened as soon as Ibn Ziyad comes to Kufa, it seems that what they were criticizing or they were objecting to was a lack of distribution or unjust, according to them, distribution of wealth. What they wanted for this wealth to be given to them as well. Not because they in principle wanted to fight injustice and inequality in life and create a balanced society. This is why as soon as Ibn Ziyad comes and opens Baytul Mal, even the head of the clan that wrote 120 letters and 120 signatures from his own clan forgot about the whole thing. Money substituted. We really haven't changed that much. Bremer, the first viceroy that came during the occupation of Iraq, went to Iraq and was American representative in Iraq. Now his memoirs is out. His life story, particularly there are a few sections that focuses on Iraq, that talks to us about how material lifestyle and material gain, we haven't changed much at all. We are prepared to submit to the tyranny for the sake of this material gain. He says, the first meeting that I had with the Iraqi representatives in Baghdad, I was afraid that suddenly in the meeting somebody stands up and says, okay, on what basis, what justification you had according to the international law to occupy our country? If somebody had asked that question, I would have no answer for such question. Once the meeting took place, as soon as they started talking, the question was when they are going to receive their salary with the $10,000 or $15,000. Nothing was mentioned of the occupation and why the Americans were there and the country being destroyed. That's exactly the mentality. You just look at how he holds the head of Imam Hussein and goes to Kufa and says, I have done a great job. I want wealth. I want gold and silver for this. These are the people that wrote letters to Imam Hussein. So what they did was not because they in principle wanted to oppose injustice in society. What they wanted, some share within the wealth that has been created. Yazid, Bani Umayyah were taking it for themselves. These people wanted it part of it, or a bite at the cherry, as they say. Didn't they say the same thing when Imam Ali came to power? As soon as he becomes Khalif, the Sahabas come to him, we want to share it. The concept of justice, equal. They say when they go to see him, and he's sitting in Baytul Mal, writing the account down, and it's what they call in, out, the expenditure, how much money was collected and how much money was given out. They should balance. Talha and Zubair, they go to see him, asking him, well, two things. Number one, your justice should not go back to the time of other Khulafa, because if that happens, most of the wealth has to be taken from most of the Sahabas. That's number one. Number two, we should be equal partners with you in sharing what is coming in. As soon as Imam asks the question, is your visit as private visit or for the sake of the Ummah? They say, no, it's a private visit. He turns off the candle, says, let me go and get a piece, have another candle, my own money. I cannot justify a candle from Baytul Mal be burned if you have private matters to discuss. They said they've come to a wrong person. We have come here to share the wealth, and this guy is telling us that the candle that is lit from and purchased from Baytul Mal, I cannot use it to discuss private matters. Let me go and bring my own candle and lit it and see what we can do. They left, they started Jamal and the Battle of Jamal. What we see in Kufa is a reflection of that mentality. It's not because they really wanted to fight Yazid for Yazid or Bani Umayyah's injustice. What they wanted was, okay, everybody else is getting a bite at the cherry, why shouldn't we? And the only pretext that they could create was Imam Hussein. He comes, becomes the president, the wali, the khalif, and we will have the posts. As soon as they realize that there is nothing in this, it's akhirah only. And Ibn Ziyad comes and says, okay, how much do you want? Both them with few pieces of silver. There are stories of Muawiyah before him saying the same thing, but this is the story. So what we have, a group of people that were material-centric, devoid of all ethics and morality. It's without a doubt. Now, what is it that Imam Hussein brings into the equation that doesn't exist? Is that honor and dignity. We see it repeatedly. ألا إن الدعي ابن الدعي خيرني بين اثنين بين السلة والذلة وهيهات من الذلة. The so and so, Yazid, has left me with two choices: either death or capitulation and indignity. And we never submit to indignity. And then links it as a message to the rest of the world. Aballah, neither God accepts it, and nor the free-spirited individuals that seek justice and equality on earth. Those who are motivated by justice and equality, they never accept subjugation and submission and capitulation to the tyranny. Ashura began as a reform, as a revolution. Had two phases. The first phase finishes tomorrow afternoon, 2 hours after the noon prayer. The second phase starts the same night, the 11th, but up to now still continuous. Hasn't finished. Those who think that Ashura finished and by the return of Ahlul Bayt to Medina, that was the end of it, they are mistaken. As long as there is the battle between Haqq and Batil, as long as the Hukuma al-Adila, which is the governance of the just, has not been established on earth, we have to continue fighting. They did their part. Are we doing our parts? That's the critical issue. What Imam Hussein brought into the equation created a new formula in which changed the whole perception and the mindset. Yazid was betting on the idea that this will be a short victory and everything else will be forgiven or forgotten. Nobody is going to talk about it. On paper, victory was his. Why? Because he has various historians claim between 14 to 35 or 50,000 people in front of 72 individuals. It was a foregone conclusion. Since the distances are wide apart, there is no communication like today that you just tick or type something and within a minute it's all over the world. The whole message could be fabricated or distorted, and nobody would know anything about it. The mindset was quantitative, numbers of soldiers, and military, that victory now and finished. Imam comes, turns the equation upside down. They used to think in terms of quantity, he says quality. They used to think in terms of immediate success, he says it's a long-term success. Brings in a concept which was forgotten totally, إحدى الحسنيين. If you look at the verse in the Holy Quran, right from the beginning of Islam, we have a living example, 313 individuals in the Battle of Badr. Ramshackle army, 10 horses, 15 camels, the rest are on foot. Most of them don't have even a sword to go and fight with a stick. Fighting 1,000 armed to teeth. Muawiyah and Bani Umayyah's army, and they won. Why? Because the conviction that we in the battle for justice are not alone. God is with us. إحدى الحسنيين. You win militarily, that's the end of injustice. You lose militarily, the hereafter is yours. So either way, they didn't lose. Now this equation came suddenly to exist in the battle with Bani Umayyah. And this is what when the izzah and karama that Quran talks about, inna al-izzata lillahi jami'a. The source of dignity is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you want that kind of dignity, you have to connect with Allah. The source of dignity is not material, it's not wealth. Because wealth and material are transient. They come today, God forbid tomorrow, gone. I have seen with my own eyes wealthy individuals that during my childhood you couldn't even go close to them in Najaf. Wallah, I saw them in Qom selling matches after 20-25 years. The shop was as long as the whole plaza. 25 years later, I saw the same person sitting down in front of the mausoleum in Qom with a small box selling matches. Ad-dahru dawar. Don't be fooled by the wealth, by power, or anything else. Sa'di, one of the Iranian poets, has a story. One day or a year, I decided to go to Hajj. And on the route that I took, put me through a village. Once I entered the village, I saw a large congregation outside the city, and I became curious. So I went in to see what's going on. I opened my path until I got to the front. I saw a wrestling match. This is a wrestling match between individuals. Participants come from different villages, and the champion is declared, the one who wins, declared as a champion. An arrogant individual finally won. Once he beat everybody else, he turns his head to heaven. Send me your Jibreel, let me beat him too. Arrogance. He said, I left that town and went to Hajj. On the way back, I deliberately made it so I passed through the same city. And my first port of inquiry was, what happened to that champion? This is 6 months or so later. I inquired about him. I was told that there is what he calls Karunsara, or a station, a place where people who are passing through the city, like motels these days, you can stay over there. So I went to that place and knocked at the door. The gatekeeper opened the door. I said, I'm looking for such a person. I saw him 6 months ago. He said, that room in that corner, he's there. He said, I'd opened the door, dark. The guy was on the floor, couldn't move. Rats had eaten his ears, and he could not defend himself. This is what arrogance does to us. We looked at Pharaoh, Shaddad, and others. Ba'udha goes into somebody's nose and drives that God, so-called God, crazy and dies. Don't be fooled and deceived by wealth or material or beauty or power or muscles, because these are transient. So what he produced in the argument, in the whole equation, was that izzah and karam, dignity. Ya Shi'ata ala Abi Sufyan. This is the Ashura, like tomorrow. In lam yakun lakum deen. If you have no faith whatsoever. Walan takhafun al-ma'ad. And the issue of hereafter, it doesn't matter. فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ كَمَا تَزْعَمُونَ. Live a free-spirited, a free individual. I am fighting you. Why you are attacking the women? كُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. That free, because as soon as you become free-spirited, you need to stand for justice. and oppose inequalities in life. And remember, this is tonight I'm trying to wrap up everything, because tomorrow night we have Bibi Zainab's to present. We have a number of characteristics over the various lectures and discussions that we had that we really need to bring into our lives. Dignity. God has created humans with dignity. There is a hadith that says, a couple of hadith, that God has created you with dignity and would not permit you to submit or to make yourself or to any indignity that demeans you. There is another hadith that says, Yabna Adam, God is your only purchaser that understands your value. Don't sell yourself cheaper to anybody else. Ashura started then. Tomorrow night, like tonight, Zainab starts preparing herself for the responsibility that she has tomorrow. Goes with conversation with Imam Hussein. I really detest when the speakers come and rip Zainab apart and turn her into a woman that didn't know what was happening, only beat her chest and her hair and etc., and demean her character. This is a woman 55 years, almost 55 years old, grown up in the Bayt, in middle of Ahlul Bayt. This is the woman that Imam Hussein, just before going for the final trip for the battle, comes and asks his sister, don't forget me in Salatul Layl. Imam Ma'soom is asking his sister not to forget him in Salatul Layl. And look at the lectures that we present and the way the image of Zainab that we have in our community. Fundamental crisis. So what we have, they thought about short-term victory. Imam says, no, it's a long-term. Until finally all injustice is removed, we will keep on fighting. And I mentioned a few nights ago, history has a value according to the lessons that we learn from it. If we don't learn any lessons from history, it has no value whatsoever. On such a day, on such a day like tonight, the 9th of Muharram, 5 things happened that changed the reality or the dynamics of Ashura. Number 1, Shimr comes to Karbala, brings a letter from Ibn Ziyad threatening Umar ibn Sa'd, that either you start the battle and give Hussein ibn Ali 2 choices, either bay'ah or fight and finish him. If you don't want to do that, Shimr will take over. Remember last night I said, both sides have disciples of Ali within them. Shimr stood with Amir al-Mu'mineen. The historians claim he was injured and nearly killed. If he was killed in that battle, he would have straight gone to heaven. Sharrul aqiba, when the end is really disaster. And then you have the other side, others that were colleagues of Shimr, and they were fighting shoulder to shoulder with him. One blink and the path could change. Shaitan works. So the equation that was changed was the fact that now we have Ihda al-Husnayayn. And it was Ihda al-Husnayayn that we keep hearing it in all the battles and the uprisings that came out after Ashura. Whether it was the uprising of the Tawwabin, whether it was the uprising of Medina, whether it's Zayd ibn Ali, whether etc., etc., etc. Even in our contemporary time, Those soldiers that were trained to absorb the concept of Ihda al-Husnayn, they fought no matter what, and they ultimately became victorious. Lebanon is a classic example. You have the third, or some people say the fourth largest army. The Arabs that didn't want to fight called the Israeli army or the Zionist army the invincible. You can't defeat them. From 1994 to 2000, defeat after defeat after defeat in Lebanon. Until in the most indignified possible, they were kicked out of Lebanon. I remember at the time I was in London and I listened to BBC, an interview with the British reporter in Lebanon as on the border as these soldiers were leaving Lebanon. And he asked the general in chief, General, it's the first time in the history of your country that you go into occupy another country and you have to leave it in disgrace. What is the secret here? He thought for a few minutes. He said, we had been taught that whenever you go, you threaten them that you're going to kill them, and the threat is enough to subdue them. Ibn Ziyad did the same thing. 30 individuals in Dar al-Imara, 4,000 around with Muslims. He just went to the roof and said, the Jaysh, the army is coming, and they all ran away. And I saw this with my own eyes in 1970 when the first police walked into Masjid al-Kufa and thousands of people disappeared. This general said, you can threaten a society that you're going to kill them, and they all pacified and subdued. You can control them. The problem is, these people come out to be killed. Ihda al-Husnayn. And we repeatedly hear it within the mindset of, I just have no answer for this kind of. That's exactly what happened to Bani Umayyah's mentality when the uprising began to come one after the other. It paralyzed them. This is what brought the dignity that was forgotten for the sake of material comfort, suddenly brought in. We have 72 people on a night like this. After Shem delivers the letter, Ibn Sa'd decides to fight on. Okay, I'm going to go for it. Ya Jaysh Allah, abshiru bil Jannah. This is what he tells his army. Ibn Sa'd, the son of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, tells his army, all army of Allah, I congratulate you. Get ready to go to heaven. Well, that's exactly what I was going to lead to. Just look, the same mentality, nothing more, nothing less. They kill, they rape, they maim, they destroy, all in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they call themselves that if they're going to go to heaven, they have speakers and scholars that I have listened to some of these lecturers that give them free ticket to heaven with 72 individuals waiting for them over there to entertain them. That's exactly, Ya Jayshullah, abshiru bil Jannah. Let's fight Hussein and then we are ready to go to heaven. They started moving towards the tents. Imam heard something, so sends his brother out, Abu Fadl Abbas, with Habib ibn Madahir and a few others. What's going on? They say, Ibn Ziyad has, the deadline is today, and either bay'ah, you swear allegiance to Yazid, or we will fight. He said, okay, wait for tonight, give us one night. We are going to fight under any circumstance. Give us one night. Wallah. He swears that by God I love to spend the last night of my life praying and istighfar and asking Allah for forgiveness. When was the last time we did it in our life? We are blinded by material life to the point we really don't see this kind of life. We have no comprehension, no perception of this kind of life. We see conversation between, again tonight, conversation between Zainab Salawatullah alayha and his brother and her brother regarding taking up the responsibility. The fourth Imam is sick. You need somebody to take on the responsibility until he can stand and take over. Imam sends Ali al-Akbar, his son, with 20 or 30 individuals to go and bring little bit of water in the darkness so they can do ghusl for tomorrow. And he tells his followers, wash your clothes because there is no kafan. So let your clothes be clean. I know there are a number of ahadith that there was no water for 3 days. It appears, if you look in the entire text, the collection of text, occasionally few individuals would go and bring very small quantity of water, primarily for these purposes. But that's neither here nor there. So tonight, everybody, those who have discharged their responsibility, they are ready for it tomorrow. And the hadith, there are a number of hadith regarding describing the status of the disciples tonight. وَلَهُمْ دَوِيٌّ كَدَوِيُّ النَّحْلِ مَا بَيْنَ رَاكِعٍ وَسَاجِدٍ وَقَائِمٍ وَقَاعِدٍ. That the whole camp was buzzing like the bees, between one that stood, one who doing ruku', another one doing sujood, another asking for prayer, etc., etc. This is what they did. And there is another verse that I read that they did their responsibility. But walakum, you are now the responsibility, have a responsibility to move history the way other people did. We really need to learn from this Imam Hussein's uprising, because justice needs to be defended. Today I was reading a newspaper which is published, Sawt al-Watan. Yesterday was, or the day before yesterday, was the 31st of October, Halloween. In this newspaper, free newspaper, was a picture of a family. I don't know whether they were Shias or Sunnis, it doesn't matter. Muslim family. On the 8th of Muharram, celebrating Halloween as if nothing else exists. That shows the depth of our crisis. Remember, I mentioned, I think third or fourth night, when it comes to propagating the message of Ashura, there are three groups of people, like three circles, one inside the other. We have to awaken the spirit of the Shia community itself, to have a better understanding of Ashura. That's number one. First step. Because if we can't, as the people that stand up for Imam Hussein and claim, it really shameful if ever we get to the stage where our life reflects the Yazid's life, but on occasion we come and hold the flag and we say Imam Hussein. And then the next stage is the other circle, the biggest circle, the Muslim community. And then we have the biggest circle outside, the social structure that we have to deal with. It's extremely critical that we understand. Everyone tonight in Ashura, they are doing their part. And I was choosing my words carefully when I said, in my opinion, Zainab Salamullah alayha prepares to discharge her responsibility. But the battle is not won. Bani Umayyah mentality is still killing and maiming and destroying the image of Islam, whether it's in Syria, whether in Lebanon, whether in Africa, whether in Iraq, or anywhere else. We still have a long way to go. Remember, brothers and sisters, we have a hadith from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq that says, Imam Zaman is not going, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, is not going to come back or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would keep postponing his return because we fail to create the right environment for him to come and lead. It's a dynamic waiting. We have to do something. We can't just sit back waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do miraculously. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. God is not going to miraculously. If God wanted to miraculously change something, he would have created, or God would have created it from the beginning. It's the dynamic that jihad creates that we have to go through it until the final confrontation when the leader comes. In every era, we have Yazid and we have Hussein. We have the camp of Yazid and we have the camp of Hussein. The message that we take from Ashura is, where do we locate and position ourselves? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the privilege of following Ahlul Bayt, inshallah, and to bless us with the power to go through this struggle and be constantly reminded with Ihda al-Husnayayn. If we lose, the hereafter. If we win, that's the end of injustice on earth. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرج. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرج. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرج. If there are any questions, okay. A sister is asking just now to ask everybody, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha for one of these sisters, I think. Sister's father? Sister, yeah. That had passed away, so if you recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi ya Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ارحمهم برحمتك يا رب. I think a few of the brothers are preparing themselves to go through to Zainabiyah, I believe, tonight. Inshallah. Inshallah. Well, keep us in your prayer as well, inshallah, when you go there.